and welcome back to another episode of VFX with Natron, our favourite compositing application. Alright, so I had this big huge plan for today. I was thinking, I would continue what I had talked about last time, which was smart nodes, and creating smart nodes. We discussed why they're important. And there's a couple. This is, as I said before, it's a work in progress. So, there were some problems and some things that we want to go over. But I feel like in order to progress to the next step, we have to discuss one of the potential flaws that we can run into with making a single node smarter. And the limitations, and we ran into this in the last one, and I will talk about it right now. Okay, so when we last discussed smart nodes, one of the things that I had pointed out was that I had made my smart node use a text node, and it couldn't do motion blur, and that creates a real limit in what we can do with the smart node. If we're restricted to just animating the text and making it rotate around, and it can't motion blur. That's very limited. So obviously, what we really want to do is be able to make a smart or a node that can motion blur. We could add the motion blur afterwards, but we run into the same problem, which is if we make a whole bunch of smart nodes that are just text nodes, that means for every text node we have to create an additional transform node to do the transformations and add the motion blur. And so, for example, let's just add a text node. Okay, so text node, and we'll connect it up. And for the time being, we're going to just do a transform. Now, first, we're going to just take this and we're going to move it from one side of the screen to the other very quickly. We'll go, let's see. We'll put it minus 500 there. Put a key here, set a key, and we'll go ahead about 7 frames, and we'll say 500, which moves it very quickly. Now we're doing this with, first I'm going to do this with, we're doing this with the transform node as opposed to the text node. Doesn't matter, because the text node will work like the transform without motion blur on. So, if we go back to our first frame and we hit play, it went across very quickly. And it was very, jittery. It went from frame to frame without anything happening in between. And while this works, in a sense, it really limits what we can do because it doesn't look what you expect. It looks like GoPros or small action camera footage. And if you want to get into cinematic looks, you deal with motion blur. And this is only one of the potential problems. There's other times when we're going to want other types of nodes to be involved. So what we really want to do is be able to crank on our motion blur and just set that to, I always set this to a low number. But if we go back to our first frame and now we hit play, you'll see it's taking a bit longer because I'm using a low motion blur, but at least, wait a minute, there we go. At least now it's, doing motion blur. So when we hit play, we get this nice streaky effect going across with our text, and it looks a lot more cinematographic. It looks a lot more like what you would expect with real motion. When I move my hand in front of my camera, there's a motion blur that's happening. You may not see it every time I move my hand, but there's motion blur happening because the shutter speed can only be so fast. I mean, I could make it faster, but then it would lose an effect. It wouldn't be as good. You have to reduce it to when you increase your shutter speed, or when you increase your frame rate, you decrease the shutter speed, or I should say, you decrease the amount of time it spends, but you still maintain a shutter speed, a high shutter speed. It's a fraction of the time between. And the way most action cameras get around this is they basically eliminate it to the point that you usually don't have to worry about it at all. All right. So the problem is we don't have it by default, which means we have to use these two nodes to get it. So, and the problem we run into is if we start creating lists of nodes, there's no guarantee inside of Natron that when I set up a list, okay, if I'm dynamically creating a list that says, hey, this node was created here on the first node, that its transform node is also going to find the exact same thing. And to my knowledge, at least I haven't figured this out yet. And if somebody who has dealt with a lot more of the programming knows this better, to my knowledge, I don't know how to get this to say, hey, I have this as an input coming into input A from the node. There's ways of doing it from command line. There's ways of getting the node. You can create, like, if you're creating everything at command line, that's great. But from an expression, I'm unaware currently of a way to really get the two bits to talk to one another without creating a second list and then say, okay, well, where am I on that? And am I connect? Is this who I'm talking to? Do I represent this? It's a catch-22. So we have to come up with a better way of doing this. And this also gets into something that people are going to want to know anyhow, which is related, which is called grouping. We can create groups of nodes, okay? If we have something, this is actually how plugins work. Most of the plugins that you see, most of the community plugins, if I go over here and I pick a community plugin, let's pick a simple one. We'll just do, the GSL ones are really, really, really simple. Most of the time. Let's just pick one I know is going to work. Let's pull out our rolling fire. That's nice and simple. Here's our rolling fire. So here's rolling fire. That's interesting. It's not showing it at the proper aspect ratio, but that's all right. We're not going to worry too much. Rolling fire is coming in. And you're saying to yourself, well, that's just a single plugin. That's a plugin, right? Except for it's not a plugin. It's actually, it is a plugin, but what all the plugin is it's a group node that has been exported. And we'll get into how to actually make these in a future episode. But we can call this as a step towards that. So up here on this group node, you'll notice one thing that's different. If we actually pull up two nodes simultaneously, so we'll pull up our transform node. And you know what? I'm going to, just because I don't want these blocking one another, I'm going to disconnect my rolling fire from there so we can look at these side by side. And here, if we look across the top of our nodes, you can see that the rolling fire has an extra little button here. It has this little thing. And that means that this is going to show the underlying node group information. All right, so I'm going to put this back in. I'm going to just, by closing this, it puts it back into our properties panel. And I'm going to click on this little thing. And when I do that, over here, it opens up the group. It's a locked group. It means that this is not editable. But you can see, here's our actual graph. Here's the rolling fire. And then over here, we have this rolling fire GL1. And if we unlock it, we can edit it and change it. And all it's doing is it has this, all it is because it's GLSL. And what GLSL is in Natron is simply a shader toy node, which we haven't gotten into. It's just a shader toy node. And so I double click on it, and here it pulls up the shader toy node, and this is it. And it's wired up to communicate bits and pieces of the shader toy node to a user control, and then it outputs that, and then in our node graph it comes out of there and goes into our next node. That's all a group node is, or all a plugin really is. It's a fancy group node that's saved and can be referenced into a project later on. All right. So now that we've established what that is, we want to create this ourselves, so to speak. Let's first of all, we want to reset our entire text node. So up here, if you're not familiar with the ability to reset a node, let's set our properties back to 1. Up here at the top, right here, we have the ability, it says restore to default values. This will completely wipe out our animation and everything else and set it to, or at least it should. It didn't reset it. Why did it? Oh, because, of course, it wasn't the text node. We're going to reset our transform node as well. Reset that. All right, there we go. We've got it set to default. Now, because in this situation, I have a very specific desire for this. I want anything that we're going to be transforming for the purposes in the future of our smart node to be built in such a way that the text is specifically going to be centered all the time. I want to limit that. That's going to be an absolute must-have function of it. Because I want this to be text that's going to be rotatable, individually accessible and rotatable. But we're not going to be doing this the rotation with the text node. We're going to be doing the rotation with the transform node. All right? So that's the thing. That's the one limitation I think I'm going to do for the purposes of this. And again, this is a simple example. All right, so how do we make a group? Well, we select the 2 nodes that we're going to want to turn into a group. And let's make, well, for the time being, we're going to just put slightly better text. No, we'll keep it the default for right now because I don't want anything to get stored in our group. We'll modify it. The only thing I want to keep is the center interact. All right. We're going to right click on our pair that I have selected, pair of nodes, and then I'm going to go up to here to the edit, and I think it's under edit. Yes, group from selection. So I hit, which is Control G. So Control G, and you'll notice that what we did, as soon as it did that, it created this little extra bit, and so it has this text1 source. It has our text node, our transform, and then it has output 1. Okay, and it says up here group 1, and over here on the right it has our properties panel is blank, and back over here on our original node graph we have a new group, and the group has an input at the top that says text1 source. Now that source means that we can feed it something from outside. We can put something into our group so that it can bring something in, and then it outputs it back out over here. So this is the input from our original graph, and this is the output back to our original graph, and this is its own self-contained entity that we can do things in here, but they're isolated. Everything we do in here is isolated by default. This is called oh fudge, I forgot the term. It's the term's escaping me. Wow. Scope. It's got its own scope. All right. Scope just means that it's isolated onto itself. We can't talk. Nothing inside of this group can talk outside of this group, and nothing outside of this group can talk inside of this group without going through our group node itself. Okay. The reason that exists is because you'll notice this has a text1 here. Well, in theory, I could have made a text1 in my main project over here. In fact, let's do that. I'm going to add another text node over here and change this one to text1 here. Okay. And this actually, when setting up a group, it's a really bad idea, because when you're setting up controls, it can be a bad thing. It's difficult to tell the difference between which one's at what level of scope for setting up controls. Okay, but from a functional standpoint, as long as the two text ones exist in different things, one's inside the group and one's inside my main project, they're two different entities, and Natron treats them differently. But if I had text one in both places, then Natron would get confused and it gets into a whole mess. Okay? For right now, we don't want this. I'm just bringing that up because it's an important concept to understand. These two text nodes are in a different scope. They're not in the same place. All right? Whoops. What didn't delete? Oh, I've apparently deleted the name, which is not what I wanted to do. Which, oh boy. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. Well, we're good to go. All right. I was worried I might have done something a little bad there for a sec. All right. So we have our group selected here. First thing we want to do is give our group a name. The goal behind this, we should name our group. This is why we can name our groups, by the way, is so that we can give them identifiers. Group 1 doesn't tell us what this node does. It doesn't give it a unique purpose. Very much like a plugin, we want to give this a name. So group 1, what do we want this to do? Well, we've added this transformation node for the purposes of adding motion blur to our text. So I think I'm going to just call this blur text. Okay? And I'm going to keep the 1 at the end because this is the first instance of this that we're going to do. And I'm going to click off of this. And as soon as I do that, it renames my group blur text 1. Okay? Now all our blur text 1 has is this node info. It just tells us that it has a label. I could put it in that this is a smart node if I wanted to. Smart node. And we could even, so it reads better, put that on 2 lines. And when I click off of it, it says smart node over here. Though we're going to get rid of that because we don't know that it's going to be a smart node. Somebody else might want it to be something else. All right. So, this has a lot of default information for that's relative to it. It's most of the node construction information, the base core node stuff. And you'll notice it also has this little option here for exporting as a Pi plugin. That's when we get to make it. That's actually how you transform these into plugins for Python plugins. Or what the community plugins are. We'll get into that another episode. But for now, we're going to focus on this. We need to give this controls. We want to take control of the 2 nodes in there, or aspects of those, so that we can do something. And we're not going to take control of every single thing in there because, my gosh, we saw how many controls there are to the text node. That's just crazy. And there's a lot of things we can do, and there's a couple ways we got to go about them. So let's get into how do we do that. Well, up here, there's this little cog here, right to the left of our blurred text word. If we click on this, it has this option here. You can do import presets, export presets, manage user parameters. This actually exists on all nodes. You can actually add additional parameters to pre-existing nodes. Hey, how's that? We could actually add a user parameter to a text node and make our own custom text node that's just a text node with our own parameter. Well, it could be useful. Well, anyway, we're going to go to manage user parameters. All right. And as soon as it comes up with this, it says we don't have anything. We need to add something to it. We want to add something. It has settings. It has node. But we want to add a new parameter. Actually, what we want to do is pick a parameter. We're going to use the parameters that are already there for right now. So, the things I think I want access to for now, when I click on this, it brings up a list of the nodes that exist inside of my group. It has transform 1, text 1 source, which is our input, the source input, which is coming from outside, text 1, which is the actual text node. It has an output, and then it has blur text, which is this node itself. So, or this group. So we want to go, what I think we want to do first is, because the text node is broken down, it does a lot of the transformation information up at the top. Before we actually do this, no, we'll do a transform. All right. And so when I select transform, it has an option here that says make alias, and it has a checkbox. Okay. An alias is hard linking. Okay, we talked about hard linking when we were talking about the types of expressions and how when linking up nodes and doing things, communicating between them. A hard link, when we hard link to the node, that means that the parameter in this directly talks to that node, and it treats that node as if it is part of, it's directly accessed in this group. It's like a direct connection to it, which is good and bad. For our purposes, a lot of times we don't want it to do it. We want to kind of have we're trying to treat this node itself as its own unique thing. So what we're going to do for now is actually we're going to keep it. I think I just had an idea. We're going to do something questionable. For right now, we're going to keep it as a hard link. We're going to just directly access it. The one reason that you may not want to do it is when you're writing code, expressions can break if you treat that, because you're not treating the whole unit as a transformation to the unit. In fact, you know what? No, I'm not going to break it intentionally. Basically, you can break a node, because something I do to the text node or something that I do to the transformation node, if I'm trying to access this node, this property that represents this node, it's accessing the node inside of the group, okay? If it's hard linked. Whereas if I have this unchecked, it's accessing the group. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Now, so we're going to uncheck that, and we're going to go over here, and to the right of this, we're accessing transform 1. And what we're going to access over here is a list of all the properties of transform 1. We're going to, for right now, the ones that I'm most interested in, we're going to use translate. We'll start off from the top. We'll do translate, and we're going to hit OK. And when we do this, it says, this node does not have a user page yet. You need to create one to add a custom parameter to it. And you're saying to yourself, what the heck does that mean? Anytime you add a user parameter, it wants to have a user control page, a user page. Usually, if you're making your own group, this is the same as the control page on a regular node. So we'll click on this, and we say, all right, well, whoops. I didn't add a page. All right. This node does not have a... why didn't it work? There we go. All right. It's asking for a script name. We want to call this, I'm going to call it control with a small case, with a small c. Control. Okay. And then we got to give it a label, and I'm going to call it with a big C. All right. And so this is the name of our page. Now, I accidentally hit the wrong thing. I'm going to hit cancel there. I just wanted to see here. Oh, that says, that's funny. Oh, I'm sorry. But we'll keep them both called control for right now. There we go. I want them both to have to match. So these are, these are all controls or all pages. Pages, we'll see when we add our first control. Now, we're going to pick our first control. I wanted to do it to the transform node, transform 1. I said translate. I want it to be I don't want it to be an alias for right now. I want it to go onto the control page. It has to go, we have to have a page to control it from. And there's this little thing over on the side that we'll get into in a few minutes called groups. And we're going to actually add this because I like groups myself. It helps break down and organize your panels a little bit better, or your controls a little bit better. So we're going to hit, for right now, we're just going to hit OK. And then you'll see that it added this thing here called transform 1 translate. Okay, that's actually when you do your dot notation, that's actually how you would call this to gain access to it. We would access control transform 1 blah blah blah. All right. For right now, we're going to hit close just so we can see this, and we'll go back to our blur. And now we'll notice on the properties for our blur text node that we've just created, we have 2 tabs. The first tab is called node. The second tab is called control. And when we click on control, there is translate X and translate Y, just like we wanted. Except for the big problem we have is that the control is our second tab, and whenever you pull up a node by default, it goes to the first tab. And that's not very useful. So let's try and fix that problem first. So we go back to our manage, and up here we can see that the reason that we're at the bottom is because we're at the bottom of this list. So when control is down here, we have this convenient keys that say up and down. Well, if I hit up a couple times, now control is the top of the list, and we can see up here on our blur text node, we now have control as the far leftmost option in it, and it comes up by default as our thing. And that is great. We now have what we want. So this is a combination, because we're making this ourselves. I want to add a few more things to it. But before we do that, I want to talk about a way of organizing things a little bit better so that we can make this better than what it was. You know how when I'm talking, a lot of times all the controls are laid out in this huge, massive amount of text information, and it makes the text node really confusing, in my opinion, and it makes it you're kind of doing this, where is the section that I'm looking for? So what we're going to do is, instead of picking a control, we're going to add a control of our own. This is the difference between this. Pick allows us to pick from existing controls from nodes inside of the group itself. Whereas add allows us to create our own undefined new controls. All right. And that has a lot of potential as well. And this also brings up the point I want to mention right now, which is that this is also going to be my last Wednesday live stream. And the reason for that is because right now, most of these live streams are happening 2 days. There's basically about 2 days, 3 days between them. And it's not giving me enough time especially with the programming ones, to really research a couple of the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to go further into this than I am. But we've got enough for the day. So I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing a Saturday live stream, and I'm going to be doing a Monday live stream. And because Monday was the most popular, and Saturday a lot of people have off, so it gives people good options. So this is going to be the last Wednesday one, just so everybody's aware. All right. Back to this. All right. So we're going to add a custom property. We're going to click on this, and this brings up this interface, and it's a lot more complex because a lot of stuff isn't automated. This is like the behind the scenes kind of thing, and it's useful for doing a lot of stuff. The first thing, while it says our script name, we need to know what we're going to be making first. And there's some types of controls in here that you don't get access to using the pick option. So this is the type is the first thing, and here's our list of types of things. And by the way, I'm going to point out, and this is a personal gripe, if at this point in time, as of what's today, 29, 2020, there is no text input that supports HTML. And there is in the core program, and it would be really, really nice for certain types of nodes that work off of a markup language to have markup capability. I mean, well, I don't want to go too much in it. We can't recreate make these work like real full native Natron nodes in every way because you can't do HTML. But for what we're looking for right now, the thing I want to do, there's a couple special ones down here. You can create a group. We can't create separators, but we're going to create a group, okay? And what a group is this little like lovely, well, you're going to see in a second. It'll make more sense. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call this transform. All right, and I'm going to label it transform. And actually, I'm going to call the script name, oh, I didn't actually name that the same. Not transform. Transform, and we're going to give it, we're going to call it script. Just so that I don't want to overwrite. I believe when we're accessing this, I just want to make sure that if we add a transform, it's not going to override some other transform. But we want to keep the label. So this is the name of the script, okay? This is how you access it by code, is the script name. And it's what I believe this is going to be called up here. And label is or would be called up here if this were the node name is the script name. And this is what it's actually going to be displayed as when for the twirl down when we see it. And so it's going to be a group. We have the option to make it a tab. Oh, I don't want to make it a tab. We're going to have it on the control page. We can pick up from our pages if we have multiple pages. And we're going to hit OK. And we'll see up here on our blur text node, we have this new thing called transform. And it has a little thingy next to it. And what I'm going to do is go back here to my translate up here. And I'm going to edit it because I want to put it inside of that transform. And when I click on this, you'll notice it changed it. This was all pre-constructed when we hit that pick. Natron did all this behind the scenes, saved us a whole lot of nitty-gritty behind the scenes manual labor that we would have had to do on our own. It added, help text and all this stuff. All right. But one of the things it did is it also has this option down here. It says group. And we want to take this and turn it so that it is grouped to our transformation script. All right. So I'm going to hit OK. And what it does is you can see up here, it reorganized that. And we're going to close it for a second. And the reason I want to do that is now if I scroll down this, I hid my transformation. So I don't have to keep it open if I'm not working with it. It's kind of like hitting this up here to hide the things that aren't, but we can isolate it based off of errors. This is just so useful, so nice, in my opinion. All right, I like doing that. I like it when it's organized a little bit better. All right, so we're going to go back to user parameters. We're going to add a bunch more to this, and I'm just going to take a quick sip of water. And we're going to add a few more parameters from this. We're going to add... Oops, we're not going to add. We're going to pick, excuse me. I'm going to do transformation. I'm going to keep it on there. I'm going to pick over here. I'm going to tell it I want it to be grouped to the transformation script. And now I need to pick my control up here from it. And here I want to do rotate. That should do everything we need. We're going to, for the time being, I'm not going to use aliases because I want it to be kept out for now. Oh, you know what? What the heck? We'll keep one not and one as. All right. So we're going to go okay. And there's catches to that as well. Because if you add expressions, it also it gets really weird and wonky. And there's a lot of expression stuff that can get really weird. So we're going to do another pick. We're going to just get through this quick. We're going to set our group. Then we're going to go down here. And I just wanted transformation. We're going to just do a few properties. We want to make keep this simple. All right, this is where it gets tricky because you got to track down it. And what I'm looking for is motion blur. So we're going to add motion blur to it. And then we're going to add, from our transform one, we're going to do transformation script. And then up in our thing, we don't want translate. We want to do our shutter. All right, there we go. All right, so those are the things I want to do for right now, just so that because this is what we did at the beginning. Now we're done with that, so we're gonna pick a new control. All right, and what we're gonna do is actually before now we're gonna cancel that. I'm gonna add a new group, and I'm thinking. No, I canceled. I am gonna do a pick. Sorry. I'm being wishy-washy again. This time we picked our text node. Alright, because I want the text field to always be visible. It's a text node. So, obviously, we go into our low. And look at the crazy. This is crazy just how many things you can do to the text node. We want the text area, and I just had it a minute ago. There's the text area. And we're not going to add it to a group because we want it to be always visible. So, I'm going to say OK. And by the way, the order in this also, it changes the order over here. And we're going to get into one other thing. So our text area now, if we hit close, just to show you, now see, we can close our transformation without closing our text. That's super duper useful. All right, let's go back to it. Unfortunately, we can't manipulate it while we're doing managing the user preferences. All right, back here. Quickly, we're going to add another group, and we're going to call this group, I'm going to call this font control, for the script, and we're going to call it, we're going to call it font, and then for the thing, we're going to put a space, CONTROL, font control. And it's going to be on that. And yeah, that's good. And then for our font control, we're going to be down here. We're going to go add. Whoops, nope, not add. Excuse me, pick. And go to my text. And I'm going to, for this, I want to go to, what did I want? There was something I wanted. Well, let's just do something simple. Like, let's pick our name. Name happens to be the font. Name here means font name. So I'm going to hit name, and I'm going to just. This is just so we can see how these two work together. All right, that's good enough. So now we can see here's our font family, and I can close that. So I can have all my things. I can organize this. This is a better text node and so forth. All right, this is again quick. We're trying to keep this quick because this is a live stream. All right, so now I want to go back to frame. We'll go early. I don't need to go too far back. We'll offset this, translate to -500. Bam, like we did at the beginning. We're going to set a key to all our dimensions. We're going to go 10 frames ahead. Set this to 500. We're going to enable our motion blur. Oh, I hope I did this. Oh, this might actually. Oh, I may have boo-booed on something. All right. This is actually good. This is going to show a problem. Why don't have motion blur? I forgot about this. All right. So I disconnected. This is not a direct. I consider this a bug. I disconnected because we didn't make this a link, a hard link to it. For some reason, it breaks motion blur. It's one of the few things, quirky things. So what we're going to have to do, you can see we don't have any motion blur. We're going to set this to motion blur. We're going to set it to 0.1 because I want to. Oh, it doesn't matter actually. We're going to delete this. Manage user parameters. Let's find that motion blur. Let's delete that motion blur. Yes, we're going to recreate it. We're going to pick it. This time we're going to go back to our transform. We're going to set it to our motion blur. Where's the motion blur? Motion blur, there it is. Put it in a group, transformation scripts, and we want to keep the alias checked for motion blur. Right? Yes. Did I do that? Oh, I think I did. Well, anyway, problem is now it's below. We're going to move it up one so that it appears in the proper location. That kept our parameter, and why are you not showing me the motion blur? Oh, yeah. Things don't always work when they worked earlier. They were working. This was the problem earlier. Maybe I did it the wrong one. Oh, it's making me a liar. I hate it when it doesn't work the way I tested it is working. Alright, let's try and delete that. Unlearn. We're going to recreate it. We'll do that. Uncheck it. Motion blur. One. Form script. One of these two worked last time, but it's not motion blurring. Or is it? It's... This is really frustrating, and I apologize for this because I tested this earlier, and in my test project it had worked. You know what? I'm going to just bring up my... Oh, that's going to break. Oh, all right. I'm going to bring up my smart node that I had earlier and see if I can show it on this. This was working earlier. Of course, it's not working now. This isn't the one. All right, let me see if I had it, and I apologize. I got it to work. It's not. Oh, I didn't do it in this one. All right. I can't show it working because for some reason Natron decided that isn't going to work now. I have a feeling it's related to the alpha channel. I did a whole lot of experimenting earlier, and what I had done is I had gone into my group and I'd put something behind it, and it worked, and now it's not working, and it's just going to be one of those days. I apologize. This is what I'm talking about not having the time to actually track it down. It was working. Then I restarted Natron and it stopped working. And then I thought I had figured it out and I got it to consistently do it one way, and now it's not doing it that way. So I apologize that this isn't working. I broke literally like about 15 minutes beforehand, which is why I don't have a demo. And I apologize. Anyway, but you get the idea that what we did is this motion blur, it came from our other node and came from a different control. We're actually controlling this from a different node. Let's see. Our rotation. Oh, there we go. All right, it showed it and then it got rid of it. I'm positive it's what the problem is. It's an alpha channel problem. I don't know if there's a way of fixing this without having... I'm going to have to... Well, to fix this, means we have to put a control, some form of control inside of our group here. You know what? For right now, I think this is really annoying. Sometimes you have to do these little things. What we might have to do is put a merge node in here. And you know what? There's an easier way. Let's put a let's see if this fixes it quickly. Let's put a shuffle node in here. Set its alpha to 1 so that actually, I think we need to do it before the transform node. Now that I'm thinking about that, because otherwise... Let's see. All right. Now we have no... Looks ridiculous. But back out here, do we have Does our blur node have no, it's not working that way. I probably had it set up right. One more time. I'm going to try this one more way. Let me just grab my motion blur, delete it, and let's pick. I apologize again. Transform, motion blur. Anyway. Okay, that's weird. It's now saying that there's a... this is what I'm talking about weirdness. Okay. That might have been the problem. We scripted, yes, I script linked it right. It has to be hard linked. So when you don't do a hard link, it creates a script to control it. Remember the and when you do a script, that's when it breaks. So that would probably be why the motion blur didn't work. Although, oh, wait a minute, that's not how we want that to be. There's wrong control. Clear expression. And no, alright, that's the wrong motion control, blah. Alright, I'm gonna stop it. I apologize. I'll try and get that functioning for the next one. I apologize. Probably not the best example. But you can see you can create, even if it doesn't function, you can create these things. This is running too long. I don't want it to go any longer than this. But you can see that is how you create a group node. Even if it's an ineffective group, we can create a group this way. That's the fundamental principles behind it. You can go about making your own groups. Some things break, some things don't. I apologize. I really feel like I should have... I came up with this idea this morning. I had a different topic, and then I realized this is going to fix a flaw in it. And unfortunately, anyway. So, sorry about this. I'll probably redo this at a later point and try, or I'll demonstrate this properly working, but the technique, at least for how you create a group, works. So, with that, you've learned something, hopefully, and keep all Natron in. See you next time. Right. Bam.